Gwendolyn had always been a light sleeper, a trait that was becoming more burdensome since moving into her new apartment. The walls were paper thin, and every creak, whisper, and footstep from the neighboring units seemed amplified in the dead of night. One evening, while lying in bed and straining to fall asleep, Gwendolyn heard it again, the faint yet unmistakable sound of someone speaking. She turned to face the wall, trying to make out the words. It was coming from the apartment next door where the reclusive Mr. Dunbar lived. "Why do you do it?" A woman's voice, barely above a whisper, drifted through the wall. Gwendolyn shivered. She had never heard anyone else in Mr. Dunbar's apartment before. The voice was followed by a low, guttural murmur that she couldn't decipher. Gwendolyn leaned closer to the wall, pressing her ear against the cold plaster. The woman's voice spoke again, clearer this time. "There's no escape. You know that, don't you?" Silence followed. Gwendolyn's pulse quickened. She knew she shouldn't be eavesdropping, but something about the conversation was deeply unsettling. The murmuring resumed, louder and more frantic. She could make out Mr. Dunbar's voice now, pleading. "Please, I didn't mean to. It was an accident." Gwendolyn's heart raced. What had he done? Who was this woman? The next day, she saw Mr. Dunbar leaving his apartment, his eyes darting around nervously. He looked pale and haggard, as if he hadn't slept. Gwendolyn wanted to ask him about the voices, but her nerves got the better of her. That night, the whispers returned, more intense than before. The woman's voice was angrier, more insistent. "You can't hide from what you've done. You will pay." Gwendolyn's fear turned into determination. She grabbed her phone and recorded the sounds through the wall. She had to know what was happening next door. After what felt like an eternity, conversation stopped abruptly. The next morning, Gwendolyn played back the recording. Her blood ran cold when she realized that there was only one voice on the tape, Mr. Dunbar's. That evening, as she was about to confront him, she found his door ajar. Hesitant but driven by an inexplicable force, she pushed it open. The apartment was dark, cold, and eerily quiet. In the center of the living room, a large mirror stood, facing the wall they shared. Drawn to it, Gwendolyn approached and looked into its reflection, which she saw made her scream. The mirror showed Mr. Dunbar standing behind her, his face twisted in terror as a shadowy figure with glowing eyes loomed over him. He mouthed the words she had heard him say over and over. "You can't hide from what you've done. You will pay." Suddenly the door slammed shut, trapping Gwendolyn inside. The air grew thick, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She turned to see nothing, yet the pressure remained. The whispers returned, now all around her, echoing off the walls of the confined space. "You listened when you shouldn't have." Gwendolyn's scream was the last sound that filled the room before everything went silent. The apartment remained vacant for months until a new tenant moved in. They never knew what happened to the previous occupants, only that the walls sometimes whispered at night.